Hello and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by Savon Jones, aka Captain Vonnie. Award-winning director Brian is out this week. This is episode 185, and we face our own shame and guilt as we break down our thoughts on Thunderbolts, aka the New Avengers. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Hello, gentleman. Welcome to Confidently Wrong. We're here. We're enthusiastic. We're excited, even though both of our NBA teams got knocked out in the first round.
At least y'all loss was legitimate.
What do you mean? You guys lost legitimately too? Or are you talking about that last, the three-pointer foul?
Oh yeah, that was absolute.
It should have been called for sure.
That was absolute. I was at the
Travesty.
arena. I was at the arena.
You were there for that game.
I was there at that game. And
oh my goodness.
The term I like to use when you've really poured a lot into these basketball games and don't get the end result is emotionally hungover. I was emotionally hungover of like I have felt so many just human feelings in terms of highs, lows, F Jalen
You just need
Brunson,
to bury your head in a pillow
F the
for
rep.
a whole day.
Yeah, calling them the broke dick Knicks, all that. And I'm like, cool, good Lord, I have nothing left to give. Thank God that there are teams who I can root for but are unaffiliated with.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, it's one of the things that makes sports so fantastic is like how like high and low your emotions can go, and when it's low, it sucks. But it's kind of like, yeah, but on the other side of that is when it goes right, and you're just like electrified, So, not that I'm saying you have to have depression in order to have elation, but there's a certain amount of like investment that sports brings that is just it's pretty hard to match with anything else.
Yeah, you're saying the highs are only as high as like the highs don't mean as much if you don't have any lows to compare them to. You don't mean you gotta be rock bottom, but like it's about the journey.
Absolutely. Our third head, our third arm, third whatever, third host, not here today. Brian is busy. We don't actually know what he's doing. He's just out doing some mystery things.
He don't like us no more.
We've been having a hard time behind the scenes. We've been having a hard time actually trying to schedule some meetups because either one of us is busy or we're out of town or we got some events going on and stuff. Mostly I feel like it's my schedule that's been a problem. But Brian's been a little bit hemmed in too. And Savon's been out and about seeing some Pistons playoff games apparently. So we just figured we'd just go ahead and do it. We're going to talk Thunderbolts today. It just came out 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll try and put this out as soon as possible so that you get the latest, the greatest, the most up-to-datest takes on Thunderbolt. You don't Thunderbolts asterisks. You don't have to listen to any of those other characters who bring real film analysis. Just listen to our take and you'll be set.
I got real film analysis, real salt of the earth, man of the people film analysis. None of this ivory tower coastal elite crap.
This is no New York Times bullshits. Not the New Yorker, not GQ.
We are men of the people. And now Brian's out doing God knows what, we can get this podcast back to its roots.
Exactly.
Regular
lowbrow.
People, lowbrow, regular schmegular, regular degular dudes talking their shit. Brian talking about one shots and 70 milliliter film and all this. And I'm like, man, I know I said milliliter. Look.
I know. It's now a volume of liquid.
Yeah, I'm just like, man, whatever.
We will have spoilers right from the jump. So if you haven't seen Thunderbolts and you don't mind spoilers, stick with us. If you do, obviously go watch Thunderbolts in theaters right now and then come back in and listen to the rest of our show.
Absolutely.
So let's get into it first. Savon, let's just start with the overall 30,000 foot view, kind of like Florence Pugh in the opening scene, jumping from who knows God how high, 10,000 feet it seemed like. What was your first impressions? Did it meet some of your expectations? Did you even have any expectations? Where were you at on this?
Yeah, so I went in with very, I think, measured expectations. We had talked about it. It was one of those, for people who've read comics, they know usually what the Thunderbolts are. They're probably the closest thing to disgusting. They're probably the closest thing to to like a Suicide Squad equivalent within the Marvel universe, you know, of terms of anti-hero characters who maybe aren't the most heroic, doing dirty work for the government. Like that's the gist of the team. And it's
But
pulling
we've
a
never
bunch.
had them framed as villains, except maybe Bucky.
Yeah, in this case,
But
it's
even then,
less
it
so
wasn't a
villains. It's
full-on
more,
villain.
yeah, but it's more so anti-heroes. People with dark pasts is probably the best way of putting it. Everyone, when
Right.
we'll talk, I guess we'll talk more about this, right? None of them are heroes, and all of
Right.
them still have their
And
own
they say
dark.
that several times,
Yeah.
very explicitly, which like you didn't need to do that. We got it.
Yeah, and
We
they have
understood.
dark, and they have dark. I mean, you know, they have dark pasts that they got to reckon with. Like these aren't
Yeah.
just they were characters. I'm like, no, a lot of them have done actively. In fact, all of them have done actively bad and harmful things. So, you know, so that's the gist of the team, and we have an excuse for them to all get together. And yeah, I mean, that's the gist of it. We get a bunch of fun characters across a wide range of Marvel movies of these side characters who are kind of getting pushed to the spotlight.
In general, I had fairly non-expectations for this one. I'm not familiar with Thunderbolts as an entity before this, and you know we haven't had this particular group of characters in the same movie at all, so I didn't know what to expect in terms of their chemistry on screen. I thought it certainly could go badly if you know it kind of just stuck to being too formulaic, and they didn't really punch up that plot, you know, and but I think overall I was pretty happy with it, pretty excited about it. I don't think I need to see it again in theaters, but certainly when it comes out on streaming, I'll probably check it out again. One of the things I think that stood out to me in terms of first impressions was just how most of the characters kind of just felt like more real. They didn't see like.
Well, they have more to do, probably, right? Like that's part of it. They have more to do.
U.S. agent John Walker, former Captain America guy, when he showed up the first time, really in Winter Soldier or Falcon and Winter Soldier in the TV show, he was just sort of like a antagonist. We didn't really know much about him other than he was kind of a hothead who just had an insecurity complex, you know, and that was kind of it. That was the extent that we got from him. And it was very inconsistent. It felt like he wanted to be a hero, but he never really did anything that like warranted being a hero. And that was kind of it. And that's kind of what we knew of him. Whereas I felt like in this movie, right from the get-go, he's got a lot more to say. He's a little bit more well-rounded. And then certainly by about halfway through the movie, we get a much better understanding just through one snippet, one vignette about him. And I want to talk about that later. But in general, I felt like the characters just felt a little bit more real, like more like real people.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't always perfect, always happy, always sad, or whatever. They were all sort of clear about, not clear. They were all looking for certain things. They were all struggling with different challenges. And everybody felt for the most part real, except maybe Red Guardian, who was a little bit more slapsticky. But that's okay. I mean, I think that role that he filled was actually really good and kind of needed in the film. So,
I mean, I think it made sense. Yeah, he is a lot, but I liked it in the context of his character. But I mean, I agree with you in that there's a lot of these movies have these side tertiary characters who the question always becomes, can they be in a more elevated role in this movie and it still work? And that was what I was pleasantly surprised by. It's like, these are a wide range of characters from a bunch of different movies, and the movies themselves have very different tones and vibes and all that. How can you make all these characters work? And even for a character like Ghost, who really had nothing to say and do, really, I mean, she was like a force more than saying a lot of stuff in Ant-Man 2. And even her, I was like, oh, they actually, to your point, make her feel like a real character in this movie who maybe she's not the lead, most substantial, most interesting, but like
I felt like she was one of the like sideline characters a little bit, but you can't have everybody be a main character.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But even for her, her whole thing in Ant-Man 2 is just the Ghost thing, which was cool, but like her character didn't have a lot besides, you know, experimented on bad childhood. But like, to your point, even her, a character who I know I was never particularly interested in as a character, cool powers, not a super interesting character. In the movie, I found myself, actually caring what happened to her and kind of caring what happened to all of them. But to your original point, I think that's a testament to the movie. And honestly, props what props do. It's a testament to the actors. Some people, when they act, aren't good enough to just kind of step into a bigger role and have more to do and more to say. And everybody in this cast, and also it's a pretty experienced cast when you get down to it. Like Sebastian Stan's been around for a minute. Florence Pugh Like,
Yeah.
she's like an actual, like, just experienced veteran actress. David Yarborough, for as silly as the role is, he's a veteran actor. So
Right.
there are moments where Val, who actually was one of my favorite characters, like, oh.
Well, she gets fleshed out way more in this one, too, than we've ever seen in her, because she always shows up for these little tiny 1 minute, 2 minute bits, and we never learned anything about her. I think in Black Panther 2, we learned that she was like, had this weird relationship and marriage with Ross, with Agent Ross, and then not Thunderbolt Ross, but the CIA guy.
Yeah.
And then and that she's like got a position within the CIA, but I mean, other than that, we really don't learn that much about her. And here we actually get into, which I think was one of the great choices of the movie, is we get to really see actually like what does she find challenging? What is it that she's actually like thinking about, and what is in the recesses of her mind, not even in her consciousness, not just what is like her scheming, plot device nature that she's kind of had in the past.
Yeah, no, her motives made sense. She's the antagonist. She's not a good person, but everything she's doing is like, yeah, I get why she's doing it. She's effing up, and I don't get down with this. But like, it's very much and not in like a evil, even twirly mustache way. Yeah, to your point, Wes, I mean, we both kind of driven the point home. None of these characters are these leads who've been in their own movies and a bunch of stuff, and even their source material, they aren't exactly going to be the lead person on the cover of the comic. And here we are, all of them well acted, very interesting, a lot to say and a lot to expand on from their old movies. Even if you haven't seen them, they did a pretty solid job of the quick exposition of, this is a bunch of anti-heroes and vagabonds and rogues who are working for the feds.
Yeah. All right, let's get into more specifics. I want to start with just the fact that this is a team up movie creates some interesting challenges for the movie and also some interesting opportunities for the movie. How did you feel like the movie came together in terms of building this team? And then did any of the characters kind of stand out to you as like, oh, like that was kind of awesome how they did that, or, anything like that?
Yeah, my big thing was I was always kind of on the fence of like, we talked about this in our previous question. It came together well in that everyone was just frankly well acted, and the dialogue and banter between them was really, really good. So I was sold on the idea of these are a bunch of more or less self-interested anti-heroes who kind of want to just do their own shit. And, plot-wise, what ends up actually bringing them all together. You realize they kind of do another soft coercion. But the banter, the dynamics, how they clearly don't like each other, or just, like it's not, there isn't
well, sometimes they don't care about each other. They're like, I don't know who you are. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, but none of them
are like, you suck.
Yeah, it's like they're not evil, they're not cruel, they're not going to torture you or do all that, but they don't like each other, and that really kind of has a fun dynamic of no one's evil and kick a puppy, twirl a mustache, but none of them are nice, and none of them like each other, and they are very, very vocal about their lack of liking and trust, which, again, to the whole writing and acting, I was sold on, of like, even when Val was like, this is a bunch of antisocial, there's no way they'd be a team. And it's like, they're a team. I'm like, yeah, but this is a very rocky team. So that element of the team up, I enjoyed in terms of their dialogue and actually the characters interacting, bouncing off each other. John Walker kind of being right at moments, but still being so unlikable. But it was just it was so well, but Ghost being extra mean to him, that whole, like, them just kind of soft bullying each other at moments.
Yeah.
Different person.
Yelena bullies him too.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, but for like 2 seconds, bro.
Yeah. But the thing is, they all kind of bully each other, and these people don't rock each other. So that's one part. The other part, and this is where going into the movie, I don't want to say reservations, but I was like, this is clearly on purpose. How will they do this? Is the power set of the team. Most team ups work because you have a diverse power set of characters who cover different weaknesses, right? You got the smart Batman guy, you got the heavy hitter Superman, you got the fighter Wonder Woman, you got the speedster, the elemental, the person who can fly. This team really is just a bunch of like special ops people, which is dope because it makes sense of why they were even doing shit for Val in the first place. Like, yeah, if I needed someone to go out and carry out a hit, pretty much everybody in this Thunderbolts team could do that. But they did a good job of having them be a powerful team, but not a super powered, powerful team. Everyone's capable, everyone's badass, but no one can fly, which, as we saw with that elevator shaft scene, like, that actually really changes the dynamics of how a team can operate, because one flyer could easily have just trivialized that entire sequence, right? So, and in the movie, they're very aware of it too, of like, yo, we're just a bunch of like a couple super soldiers, some spies, all this. I'm like, yo, nobody could fly. We ain't got nobody who could shoot no lasers or got no magic powers. We ain't got none of that shit. But it worked because, and we'll talk more about Bob with this. You know what? I have a separate. I will get to Bob in a sec because I want. That's a whole another thing. But basically, they had a limited power set that leans into them being dysfunctional because it's clear they're not a intentionally put together group. You know, this isn't like someone pulled together different skill sets like Nick Fury was. Like, nah, this is really just a what is it? An alliance of convenience, and they're mismatched, poorly
not
put
even
together.
Convenient.
Yeah, they're like a very shitty put together Marvel Rivals team that's just like, yo, man, what we got? All right, we got no healers. No tank.
DPS,
DPS,
DPS.
And they're all like melee DPS. It's not even like a long ranger or a flyer. I'm like, none of you don't got a flying DPS. You got a DPS with some range who could poke. And then they're just like doing a boss fight. So the actual Thunderbolts group together in the movie in terms of power and interactions, really, I think was sold on it. And I think they nailed that part of the movie.
Hilarious that the name Thunderbolts in this one comes not from Thunderbolt Ross, but it comes from Yelena's soccer team when she was like 6.
Yeah, which I like that. I mean, how they built that all up, I thought was like, oh, this is funny.
That was pretty funny. A little like zigzag on what you expect if you're a comic book fan, I guess.
Absolutely.
I agree 100% that the part where they don't like each other is really great, and the fact that they like have this great banter is really great. And I think they don't land the plane in terms of bringing the team together. And I think their direct comparison is like Guardians Volume 1, in which it's very clear that they don't like each other as well. They struggle. They form this alliance of convenience, like you said. It's like, we're just going to like stick together until we figure out like the Power Stone or whatever it is at that point. And then we'll go our separate ways. And then through the trials and tribulations of just trying to just get to the end, they end up like failing a few times. They end up having to like tell each other, certain things about how they suck or whatever, and facing the consequences of like their non-investment in each other. And I feel like this movie just didn't do that, right? Like they very well establish in a really good way, in a really interesting way, like how they don't like each other and how they don't get along, and like why it is that this wouldn't work. And then by the end, they're together and they're sort of like, okay, like this is working, but it never felt like they actually had to dig deep into themselves or their relationships with each other to figure out like why it was going to work. Especially not across the board. So like Yelena builds a bridge to Bob, right, at some point in a really meaningful way, and I thought that was like really well done how they did that. But that doesn't mean she built a bridge to U.S. Agent, to John Walker. It doesn't mean she built a bridge to Ghost, right? Like these other bridges that we're supposed to accept that they're there now by the end are like not really. We didn't get to see them actually being made, except for the part where they like have to go through the what did she call them, interlocking rooms of like shame rooms or something like that.
Yeah, just like the different nightmares in that the boy's like mind with his powers. Yeah,
like they had to like walk through them together, but like it didn't feel like that was enough to like actually build a bond between them. And it worked the first time they tried it, right? Which is, I think one of the things is like they didn't really have to fail at something. They made it out of the shaft together. They got saved by Bucky together on their escape from the shaft or from the complex, and then they're successful in like battling the void. And it's like, when did they actually fail because of their inability to work together? They didn't really. And so I think it's formulaic in the sense that like you kind of got to fail before you can succeed. Unless I'm missing something, and my memory's bad because you're like rubbing your face, but
I know.
It really felt like it felt too easy. And so this is my negative. We're going to talk about negatives later, but this is my negative, is it felt like coming together actually was too easy for them. And that would be my one knock. It wasn't enough to make me be like, this movie sucks at all. because so many of the other character interactions are so good, and the fight scenes are really cool and fun. Certainly this movie is way more than enough to like go see and enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like taking it to that like, oh, this is like an elite level, it felt like that was the one thing that to me was like, like I didn't really believe that you guys came together as a team and enjoyed it, and that you had to work for it.
Oof.
And that was
it. Well, I fundamentally disagree. I think the movie did the exact opposite of what you just
really
described.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell me, Sav, why I'm wrong.
So this is the way I see it. Thunderbolts isn't about this group having to like each other. So them actually like getting along or liking isn't really relevant, isn't important to me in terms of like them being a team or a group. To me, it felt earned because you see how their collective motives shift a little bit as the movie goes by. The main point of the movie is them just trying to get the F out of there. Like, for the vast majority of the movie, their only goal is, it's in our best interest to all try and escape this space together because there's no other way to do it. And then the moment that we can leave and go about our way, we will. Like, that was their main thing. And here's the thing, that worked out. Like, that was going to, well, that plan actually wasn't going to work. That plan was going to fail because Valve's people was literally hunting them down, was about to kill them in Red Guardian's limo. So, like, to me, that is the failure part of, they tried to escape. Their plan was to selfishly run off and do their own thing. That shit did not work out.
But Bucky saved them.
Well, Bucky didn't save them,
though. Anything.
Well, Bucky didn't save them. Bucky basically captured them and forced them to help him, which I think is very different than, it's not like he just gave them some magical speech and then suddenly whatever. They thought Bucky was there to help. He was not.
Yeah, but there's no reason for them to work together for him. Like, why?
Well, that's the thing.
Why would they help him?
So they help him because I'm answering your question. I'm answering to you.
All right.
Because then that's what makes Thunderbolts interesting. All of these characters are anti-heroes in dark past. None of them are evil. So it's not ridiculous. And they've all been through, frankly, awful things that have happened to them. So it completely tracks that Bucky, a character who also is a heroic figure who has had a dark past, which he acknowledges himself, is like, yo, just because you've done awful things or had this awful shit happen or whatever, it doesn't have to define who you are. In fact, he makes it very clear you can't run from this shit. And he recognizes every one of the members of Thunderbolts has a complicated past. Again, they're not evil, they're not bad guys, but they have a lot of like personal trauma and, things to reckon with. And Bucky's able to appeal to that in a way to say, and kind of like also strong arm on the side too, of like, look, man, y'all tied up and I kind of got you at my mercy because I'm Bucky, but let's be reasonable. And also keep in mind, they even recognize that Bob is dangerous. And like, for me, what makes it work is that none of the characters are evil. So being able to appeal to their humanity and decency made sense in the context of the story. They might not go out of their way to help someone, but they're not just going to let somebody just suffer and die either, which makes trying to actually get them to care about something really work. But that's what I think made the movie work. But also keep in mind, a major theme throughout the movie is Yelena literally going through depression because she's unfulfilled. She doesn't really find any meaning in what she does. And clearly she even said she wants to do something more face forward because she clearly wants to find some type of deeper meaning, which I think is heroics. Red Guardian was always about that life of like, how he literally says there's nothing better than the intro to the movie is them talking about finding purpose. And for him, as goofy as he is and as silly as he is, he makes a very poignant point of service, fighting for something bigger than yourself and all of that. And he doesn't come off as bullshit. So like when you start going through the group, Yelena's already going through an existential crisis of figuring out bigger purpose and clearly wants to do something more forward-facing heroic. Red Guardian been wanting to be a hero and help people. He's just a goofball who can't get out his own way. U.S. Agent was effed up because he killed that man who surrendered, but he was never evil. He was still someone who even said himself, he's done combat rescue missions and all that. At that point, his backstory is very similar to Sam's of like, he's a soldier who, at least in the context of his career, tried to help folks. But like Ghost, is a victim of being experimented on. But once you go through this roster, they're all people who either from what we know about them or from what we've seen in their character interactions do want to help people and do the right thing. So it's not ridiculous to have have Bucky, probably the best person to say, hey, yo, get over your past shit, to drive that point home. But to me, that's what felt most earned, because when I was watching the movie, part of me was like, okay, they're all just trying to run away from Val and get away, but like, how's this going to tie into them working to stop the threat, which I assume would have been Bob? And like, I guess to me, all of that made sense. None of them are evil. None of them are cruel for cruelty's sake. None of them necessarily liked each other, but Bucky made a very compelling argument of why they should still try to go back and help, spurred on by, frankly, Red Guardian, who really drove the point home. So it's not like he's just preaching to a brick wall. Like, at least some of them were kind of on board. Like I said, John's not even John and Red Guardian both want to be heroes. John's just a dick. Like, but that's different. Like, being a hero and being a dick are not, you don't have to pick one or the other. You can be both. And again, we saw Yelena establish that she wants to be better. So I just named 3 of the Thunderbolts right off the bat who have altruistic motivations, at least somewhere in there. So why is it so crazy that Bucky's able to say, hey, man, you could run or you can face your shit and try and do something to help and get over, because they're all in denial about their past.
Sure. And you've worked with kids and adults for long enough to know that just telling somebody something is not usually enough to actually make them change their habits or like the way that they react to something when faced with challenges right the first time. And so it's like, yeah, I get that like some of it was maybe Bucky's like, exhortation of them to put their past behind them or to not let it define them. But it's like you could hear that. But especially given the context of this movie of we get stuck in our ways and we get stuck in our regrets and our shame and whatever, right? Like these things that we have as like our low points. Why were they able all of a sudden to be like, okay, we're a team, like everybody go there and like do this and do that? And
keep in mind, they weren't all of a sudden a team. When they went to fight the Sentry, they all got their asses beat and then immediately actually had a collapse. Like, they didn't immediately come together as a team. They went thinking, okay, we'll stop Sentry or at least try and talk down Bob. Yeah. Got cooked and were like, you know what, man, F this. And it wasn't until they really saw things going ass up with Sentry just, about to destroy the city that they said, okay, this maybe actually is a bit of a dangerous situation. But I think that was more of just the Sentry forcing their hand because they saw the city getting consumed with literal darkness. But like, I don't think it wasn't earned because their first fight as a team, they got washed. They got washed and then immediately started infighting, bickering. Like, you had a whole thing where Yelena and Red Guardian had to like talk about their relationship of Yelena wanting him, but him not necessarily feeling wanted. Like, to me, I feel like you're skipping over all of those key moments where they did develop as a team, considering still like a movie. You got to have it happen in like a 2-hour window.
30 seconds of screen time, you went from them being like, I'm out, to them being like, okay, now I'm rushing in to save this thing, and then Ghost is going to save this kid. And
they saw people getting killed. Like, I don't think it's weird to say that just because Yelena and them all had a falling out with each other. They were using their powers to complement each other in this like really teamworky way when they hadn't actually talked about like what they need to do differently. They hadn't actually had to confront each other with like, your bullshit is like fucking us up right now, right? Like, well, that wasn't why they lost the fight.
You got to go through to earn those moments. We were talking about like our championship, aspirations for our basketball teams earlier, right? Like, you got to hold each other accountable. You got to work on the things that you suck at, and in order to improve. And they just never had that chance, right? Like, in order to keep the movie shorter, they just went straight from upstairs where they had this big fight where they got washed, like you said, to downstairs where they're like, oh, this is bad. And like, no, we're a team. Like that part to me felt like, ooh, like you needed another beat in here to like.
So you don't think them just seeing the city suddenly getting attacked like wasn't enough of a call for them to say, hey,
if you as a team haven't talked about like what needs to be different, then you're just gonna do the same things and you're just gonna get your ass kicked again. And they should have.
So I think what you're missing is that the issue with them losing that Sentry fight had nothing to do with teamwork. Like, that wasn't we're not working as a team, we're losing type situation. That was y'all came together, y'all are clearly outgunned and outmatched. Y'all let that get to y'all, because this whole team thing was already, frankly, on very thin ice. Like, they already were barely.
How do you overcome an opponent who's outmatched with you? You got to work together, right?
So look, this is me making the connection. All right, You hear me? Look, the thing that makes them come together is seeing innocent people in danger. That's it. That is the key motivator. It's not, let me be better with the team, or maybe they're a little different, let me forgive them. ultimately the spur for all of them, because again, I said before, they're not evil or cruel people. They all have a heroic streak in them and want to help people in some capacity.
Yeah, but they already did that. That's why they were fighting Bob.
Yeah, but then no, they were trying to stop Bob, but then when they lost, they gave up. But then they went back into it, not even to fight Bob,
yeah,
it was to try and help.
Nothing changed between then.
So it's not about what changed between them, it's about what changed with their internal motivations. The movie isn't about them getting along with each other, it's about them moving past their individual issues in order to try and be a better version of themselves. All of them have their baggage, their trauma, their bullshit. They decide when they lose the fight, you know what, F this, I'm gonna do me. But they're not evil. They see innocent folks in danger and decide, man, I can't just let innocent folks be getting whatever this is that's happening. And they decide, and even individually decide, man, let me turn around and help. Not because of us being a team, but because, people need help. That's why Red Guardian ran and had the rock fall on a girl, and he just ran and jumped in. It's why when one of them was holding up the thing to save a person, the others came to help. It's about teamwork. It's about helping folks. Which, again, tracks if you look at just the actual group and what their motivations are. Red Guardian, Yelena, and John Walker are all people who have tried to be heroic and save in some level, maybe misguided ways. So, I don't think they have to have gotten along or had some kind of kumbaya friendship moment to say.
But then they're not changed by the events of this movie. You're talking about qualities they already had and came into the movie with, but then the events of the movie didn't actually spur them into these particular growth moments. That's what I was thinking. I don't think you've made the case that the events of the movie were able or why they were able to actually deal with what was going on in a way that actually just made sense in terms of their being a team. I think what they did do really well, and what you're sort of getting to is Yelena having to face her own stuff, right? And knowing what background she comes from in terms of trying to save people from the Red Room kind of uniquely positions her to be the one who builds a bridge for Bob to escape the void or the clutches of the void or whatever. And I think that was really well done. And they deserve a ton of credit for making that a central piece of how they get out of the pickle that they were in. And I thought that was a really huge strength of the movie. I don't know. Did you think that was something you bought into? Was Yelena being able to navigate these mental, emotional puzzles?
Yeah, I think that's what makes Thunderbolts good, is that everyone's damaged and has their own baggage and bullshit. Literally, the theme of the movie is not letting your baggage and your past or whatever it is dragging you down, not letting it define who you are and what you can be. That's literally every character's mini arc or lesson they have to come around to. Hey, John, yeah, you lost your family in Captain America, you can still do good shit. Hey, Elena, yeah, you don't like what you're doing and you miss your family and you feel lonely. All right, you need to lean into the connections you do have, or figure out where is family. And for her, it's Red Guardian. I think that part was fine. Sentry being an entire allegory for literally just being bipolar and depression was extremely well done. That was one of my favorite parts of the movie, which is, again, to our original, that's why I liked the relationship the other characters had, because everybody can relate on a level of regrets and, man, I wish I could have done things differently. There's not a single character in this cast who doesn't have that going on with them. But wait, I got a question. Before I got to ask it. So they fight, they argue, they all walk off. Sentry goes nuts, starts destroying the city. Do you think they just would have saw the darkness and said, not my problem, and kept on walking?
Maybe.
You think Red Guardian would have just seen that and be like, oh, well, we argued and I ain't got time for this shit, and just kept it moving? Like Yelena, John Walker, you think all of them separately would have argued, walked off, saw that the darkness thing is spreading and going out of hand, and then they would have been like, oh, well, not my problem, I'm going to still go about mine. Do you think, did that feel like that would have made more sense what we know about the characters?
No, what doesn't make sense to me is why would they have any different success 30 seconds later in the movie without anything having been hashed out in between?
Okay, so
there wasn't even an elevator ride for us to be like, yo, fuck you for doing this and fuck you for doing this, and then them all being like, oh yeah, fuck me for doing that. There wasn't that moment of
I don't know, because there wasn't. I said this before. I want your response to this is there wasn't a moment in their fight with Sentry that could be blamed on one person's actions not being a certain way. So what would they have had to argue about that? And that's part of that. But the other thing is, them fighting Sentry is a different problem than them saving people. So it was never about a game plan or a strategy. Like, their issue was never strategy or being on the same page. That was never, in my opinion, that's never what the movie
But then maybe
was about.
they should have had a plan.
Well, what do you mean?
Right? Like,
well, at the end, they didn't really have the plan.
You realize Bob is actually now way more powerful than he was before, right?
Yeah.
Bob is becoming self-actualized, right?
Yeah,
because he got brainwashed by Dufontaine.
He's got mental health issues, because that was the whole thing before that. Like, his mind was kind of cracked before even Dufontaine. That's why he was so dangerous.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying, like, he didn't realize he could do all these things, right? And then as soon as he starts fighting, he's like Neo in the Matrix when he becomes the one. It was like, oh, I'm just like 50% doing this and like just beating the crap out of you guys. And like, they should have written like, oh, we cannot just like do this as individuals. That's not going to work. Or wait a second, like, this isn't about us being powerful. This is about us being like owning our shit, like owning our like emotional baggage. In some way, I don't think they should say it like that, but like that's the kind of like confrontation that they would have needed between each other, I think, in order to actually like explain how as a team they're going to self-sacrifice for the world, right? Like, we've all learned of them as like fairly selfish individuals. And certainly they don't really like each other. So why is Yelena go into the void, and then why do the others follow? Right? Like, they don't know that they're going to live. They all question it. They're like, we don't even know if anybody that goes into this thing is alive. Like, we think maybe that's our hypothesis, but like, so what is it that would make all four of them self-sacrifice potentially for Yelena, right? Or for maybe Bob. They're thinking it's for Bob.
The answer, honestly, is to try and help the people in the city. When you say, like, a lot of you're like, why would they do this? A lot of the root of it is they have a kernel of good in them. How much can that kernel of good be nurtured into being something that genuinely affects how they go about handling their shit? Like, that's
yeah, but like, the movie wasn't.
That is
about
the answer. I mean, I disagree. Like, didn't we just talk about the beginning of the movie, them talking about a higher calling and helping others? Like, I feel like the theme of wanting to help others and higher calling is consistently pushed throughout the movie. That's literally why in the end they become the new Avengers. Like, that's kind of them completing the arc of embracing, we actually can have heroic qualities, and those heroic qualities we don't have to be defined by our past. Like, that's the entire point of them all being able to kind of move past it and be this new squad. Like, I thought
but none of the movie was about that. None of the movie was about them being unable to help people.
I disagree. I think the biggest thing was that they're trapped in a bubble of either doing the work for Val or wanting to try something different. And literally, when they do want to do something different, and Yelena's kind of meant to be the catalyst for that, Val tries to kill them all. Like, the whole thing of the movie is that they are trapped in this cycle of not being able to be fulfilling and help. And the movie was going to start with them not even getting a chance at redemption. That's why I think they also realized, shit, man, we were going to die. Like, is this how we want to go out? Just being a CIA asset, sitting to do all this shit and kill each other, and Yelena's already not right. Like, I just feel like there were moments that consistently drove home, and lines and dialogue that drove home these points. And I don't know, I think
there was a mismatch between, like what you said. I think there's a mismatch between like some of what they were saying and what was actually happening in front of them. That like they didn't actually pair up well enough to make me believe that like they as a team were going to self-sacrifice for each other.
The streets are going to tear you apart for this one, Wes.
I don't think so. I think that's not. I think it wasn't terrible. It wasn't like, oh, like why would they ever? But it was kind of like, that's a bit thin given what we know about all the characters so far, and the trials and tribulations that they've been through. None of it was like them failing at what they were trying to do in terms of like being these anti-heroes or being on their own or whatever.
We'll take it to the PlayStation. We'll take it. Look, listeners, man, when y'all see this movie, because me and Wes are clearly just on some real fork in the road divergent type shit right here.
We're not going to come together on this one. All right, so that's our take on that. Tell me about Bob. I loved it.
Bob is what really elevates. So
Bob and the Void.
So I said before that when I saw the trailers, I saw Bob, and you remember
Yep.
Brian and I got excited because it was like, oh shit, Bob's in this movie. And I was like, oh, Bob Reynolds, Sentry? Okay, bet. The moment that I saw Sentry in a trailer, I had very high hopes for this movie. And I didn't want to say too much else on the pod because it would have been a spoiler of like really cool shit with Bob. And I'm glad that we kind of avoided that for the most part. But Bob is what escalated the movie for me in a way of like, oh, this is going to be like a movie with some real stakes and shit. Because if you've read comics, you just know about the nature of the character Bob Sentry. You learn that, yes, he's kind of a Superman analog in terms of his power set. And that is the least interesting part about him. You know,
yeah.
His biggest thing is that the interpretations vary, but he has a dark side to his powers that is hurt by his like mental health and having like a fractured mind or really, really intense. In this movie, they framed it as like, I think he had bipolar disorder, and then he had like a history of meth and drug addiction that exacerbated all that, right? But
and then he got super soldier serum, which exacerbated that.
Exactly. So the whole point with him has always been extremely powerful, but far too mentally unstable to be a reliable hero, and can be, frankly, as much of a problem as he is, as a help.
I would say turning people into nuclear shadows is well, at least frankly non-heroic problem. Yes.
Well, at least he didn't die. At least they don't die. He just traps them in like a torture of your worst nightmare ever. Which I'm like, could you just have killed me?
Yeah, maybe they'd rather be dead at that point.
I think instant flash death is better than reliving the worst day of my life infinitely. I'm like, hey, dog, can you just kill me? Like, hey, dog, we ain't got to even do all that.
That's a special kind of torture and maybe worse than dying.
Yeah, nah, man, take me out, make it clean. But no, Bob was great because the character and his power set escalated the movie. To the original point I said before about I liked that their power set felt more grounded or not super no one's OP. That really, really drove home like, oh, so they're going to be clearly underpowered against Bob. And the moment they saw Bob, I was like, okay, cool. So we know who the villain is. And there is no way they're going to be able to fight him. Like, the moment they saw Bob in the trailer like a year ago, I was like, okay, cool. They're not going to be able to beat his ass. So, like, they're clearly going to have to get creative with how this villain gets defeated. So you already know it's not going to just be a big CGI in-game fight because, y'all ain't going to win this shit. Like, it's never. So that was
big time CGI, but yeah, it wasn't not
a big CGI battle fight, which was right. So I knew that from the trailer like a year ago when it came out, and that really raised my elevations for the movie or my expectations.
Which is awesome, given that like most MCU movies do end in like this big battle.
Yeah, I mean,
so kind of a nice change of pace.
Yeah, it's just one of those. This character is not a character who you beat up. Like, I've never seen in all the comics I've read with Sentry, I've never seen one where you just beat him up. Like, that's just not how you win. So and then them using his power set as frankly an allegory for mental health and depression and bipolar, all that was just a masterful writing stroke and really made this character that much more, interesting. He had you learn about his backstory. He was abused, he was beat, he had drug addiction, he had all these, he just had everything awful that could happen. All the aces, all the like adverse childhood experiences that someone could have, this man had them.
Oh yeah.
And and shout out to the actor. He was so well acted of being just awkward and clearly sad and having something just really, really, he just looked like a very just sad, pitiful character, but like in a good way of like, oh man, I feel for this dude. Like, oh, he's like, Bob just needs a hug. Bob just needs a friend.
Yeah.
But they I think they did a really good portrayal of a character who can be very hard to write properly, and I was thoroughly impressed. Like I said, I knew I was excited when they announced him, and I left the theater thoroughly satisfied of like, oh man, I'm really glad that I'm just very happy with how they did this character.
Yeah, it's a tightrope with him, right? Like you're having to make him really strong, but weak, right? In certain ways, not physically, but just he has like clear weaknesses. But those weaknesses also make him more dangerous in some ways. He's fighting this line of like, he can't be so unpredictable that you're just like, oh, he's just chaotic. It's just, he's clearly got some swings to him in terms of like, he can go down a darker and darker path, and it's hard for him to get out of it, which, right, like you said, is that symbolism for how a lot of people describe depression. And then he's also he gets into this point where he's like, wait, I don't need to listen to anybody. I'm clearly more godlike than any of you, so whatever I do is the right thing. So let me just do this thing, right? But that's a hard thing because you could turn into like just a really like ridiculous villain at that point, right? Like way over the top,
Well, that's
without
why
a conscience, without anything, and he doesn't quite lose that much of his humanity when he gets into that mode.
Well, I would argue that he never lost his humanity. This is
right.
just a
That's what I'm saying.
I would think. Yeah, I mean, agreeing with you. I think what made him such a good character is that or made him such a good antagonist is that he's not evil. He's just a very sick man, frankly, very just sick man. But unlike a lot of other people who are sick and frankly, they might suffer silently or only affects, a small circle around him. The analogy in this movie is, okay, what if someone who was going through these mental struggles that, frankly, let's be clear, millions of folks go through on a daily basis. There are many regular folks right now who've been through very much what Bob has been through and some. But it's like, cool, what if we take that, but he has the powers of a god? And suddenly shit gets scary because he's not
and
evil.
He spreads that feeling of hopelessness.
Exactly. Yeah. It's
to everybody else, right?
Exactly. It's like, depression can be pervasive and it can affect the space around you. And this is literally just that, but just exponentially increased. Instead of a man who's going through a depressive episode having to work through stuff with their immediate family and friends, it's like, okay, cool. What if we did that? But it's like a global threat now.
Yeah.
And when you look at it that way, we've probably met and seen Bobs in our life all the time of someone who is struggling, needs help, can never quite get on their feet. Life's always dealt them the worst possible hand. They're not a bad person, but bad shit just keep happening to them. And it's, you understand why people make poor choices or why, people end up in situations of man, that's really sad to see. But when you look at the context, you get how it happened. Again, Wes, you and I work in education. We've definitely seen how just someone not getting the support they need at a young age can just, it's like, shit, I don't think I would have done any better if I was in that situation type shit, But that was really well done. It was a really strong part of the film. Bob, I think, is going to be a lot of people's favorite character because he's relatable. Or he's relatable in that, we know a Bob. We've met a Bob. He wasn't flying around and doing all that other shit, but, it's a very relatable tragedy, and I think it's always nice to have something like that for an antagonist to where you're rooting for them to be defeated, but you're not rooting for them to lose.
Yeah.
I wanted Bob to be defeated. I did not want Bob to lose.
Right.
It was like, oh my God, someone get this poor dude the help he needs. Because this shit is just awful.
Well, it's awful, right? And he's deluded enough in his state to be in his most elevated state, right? Or maybe it's the most depressed state, right? Is that he sort of thinks he's releasing people from their burdens in some way, right? And I don't think he realizes when he does this thing that people end up actually just facing their worst day over and over again, like you said, or worst moment over and over again. But I think he kind of voices it or says something of just like this is no way to live the way that we are living, and so it's my job to free us, right? I don't, that's kind of paraphrasing what.
But 100%. He wants to make his sadness everyone else's default and norm, which
right. He thinks, this world isn't right. I'm gonna help do this thing, and part of that may be his mental illness talking to him. And it's not super clear whether the void is actually a separate entity that's inhabited him, and that's maybe why he gets these negative feedback thoughts that are going on, in addition to maybe his own mental health, or whether it's just literally just his mental health has been whether his depressive state has actually just been magnified, and kind of sucking the light out of the room or the world. Because of the super soldier serum. I think that's still a little bit of a question left in the air for us or for future movies to explore.
It's I mean, the movie might do it differently, but historically the void is considered a manifestation of himself and his powers. It's not like a separate entity. It's not like an outside force. It's just his power.
But I think you could make it like the Phoenix Force almost, right?
Well, maybe, but I'm just letting you know how the power,
gotcha.
how I interpret it with the movie is that there is no external force. It's their own super serum thing that they made. Marvel's always emphasized that it can amplify traits about you, positive and negative. This is just what happens when someone has extremely bad lows and what that can look like when they have this kind of godlike power. But I don't want to take it too deeply as like a separate force, separate entity. I think it's just more of a, he's so powerful that his depression can actually manifest in this insane, crazy form. And we gotta, help make sure our dude is like, balanced out.
That makes sense. I think that's probably a reasonable explanation. Or summary of it. I thought they left it open a little bit when he was hiding from the void, right? And his body was still doing all of these things. So it was like he wasn't in control anymore, and he wasn't the one like making these projections or making these shame rooms. It was maybe the void as an actual character was sort of taking over and doing these things. But
I think it's more of a Hulk. Think of it like, I think you should think of it as like almost a Hulk Banner type relationship.
Yeah.
Of like different personalities, different like people in this mind, but ultimately they still are
the same.
They're still the same person in this vessel. It's just he's got his mental illness and drug addiction manifests in like alternate personality.
Makes sense.
But which again, very all very similar to how a lot of mental health struggles actually are for folks in real life.
Yeah, I thought the actor did a great job. I saw somewhere that Steven Yeun was actually tied to that role for a while, and then eventually had other projects or something that he ended up doing instead. And I thought he would have brought a really interesting like kind of tone to it, because we've seen some of that in Invincible, like the work that he does with Mark. Kind of similar, right? Mark goes through these depressive states. He goes through these other moments where he's got to be both like angry and still naive and good and still making the wrong choices, and all of it. So like that complexity that he can bring to that. So I thought he would have done a fine job after I heard that he was maybe in for it. But I think now that we've seen Lewis Pullman do it, I'm like, can't imagine anybody else doing it. Like just, a great mix of that. I'm bringing the naivete, like I'm going to be excited about saving my new friends, right? I'm just going to latch onto these people as, okay, well, like they seem like they're good people, so I'm going to trust them and trying to like protect them. And then still also portraying like this immense heaviness and sadness and worry that he had. I don't know. I feel like that's probably pretty tricky to do as an actor. It seems like that would be tricky to do. Not being someone who knows how to act, but it seems hard. And I think he managed to like pull all of those into his character as he was on screen.
He was well acted.
Was there anything in this movie that was a miss for you, or just all positives and glows?
No, there was nothing really that I was just like, oh, there was never a moment of, oh, I don't like this, or this isn't hitting it for me. Like I went in kind of with loose expectations of what I would have wanted from a Thunderbolts movie, and
you said measured.
Yeah, but I more or less got what I wanted. Like the main thing I would have wanted is, okay, I need to see these characters being badasses. Need to figure out, okay, what's gonna make y'all try and be not shitty, which I was down with that. They did Bob justice. Val was a way better character in the movie than I expected her to be.
Way better. She wasn't just like a mustache twirling, like you said, villain.
Yeah, like and she's just so well acted that like even when she's just saying her lines, they're just so well acted and delivered that I just am having fun watching her be on screen. Anything you see in this thing will come up squeaky clean. Next cut, we gotta get all this shit out of here. Yeah, no, I've never seen Veep, but I've heard that she's like great. I mean, she's funny. Like she's a comedic actress, but she's really good at measuring that good blend of sarcastic, funny, but still deadly and serious, to where she's funny throughout the movie, but I am consistently taking her seriously because I'm like, man, it's the CIA. that's the real life Legion of Doom. Like, man, y'all better chill out. Y'all better mess up with Val. Like, Val don't play that shit.
But yeah, like she took her Veep character and like extended it into this role. Not so like incompetent, right? She took out the competent part of it, and it was like, what if she was just like trying to right some unknown like insecurity that she had and some like guilt that she had, and was obsessed with like, I don't know, improving the like militaristic state of the U.S. Like this is what it would look like. All right, let's see, anything else you want to kind of mention from the show? I thought a lot of the action scenes and the puzzles they had to solve were like pretty cool. The banter between the team was pretty good. I enjoyed most of it. I thought they did a great job with just the one-liners and the quips and stuff, and it didn't get overbearing to me. I feel like there might be some people out there who are like, I could have done without all of that, or it was
go
just
watch
like
a Christopher Nolan movie if you just want to watch the most unserious genre in the most serious way possible.
Yeah,
like, all right.
But I didn't. I enjoyed it. I mean, that's just kind of my thing. Like enjoyment. I love when people are just like sarcastic and witty and that kind of thing. And they got all the comebacks in the world. Funny that like Bucky washes his arm in a dishwasher to like clean it. Like,
hey, man.
Who knew that's how you take care of a vibranium fake arm?
Hey, the Wakandans told him, hey, Bucky, this shit is dishwasher safe. So go to work. It's vibranium. It'll clean easy, waterproof, dishwasher safe, baby.
Of course they would be, right? Like they would think of all that. They'd make sure.
You know how effed it would be if the Wakandans gave you a fancy arm, but then it's like a John Deere tractor or like an Apple phone where you have to spend a bunch of money and send it in because you can't write to repair it.
And you're armless for 2 weeks while it's in transit.
Could you imagine? Yeah, Bucky got a UPS his arm to the Wakandans. He got to get his warranty, and like, is this covered by the warranty? Ooh, actually, it's just like
you don't have Wakanda Care Plus. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you don't got Wakanda Care Plus. Sorry, pimp. And then they sending him like just a tungsten alloy arm instead of vibranium or some shit. They downgrade on him. Nah, that was
Shuri would
cool.
never. Shuri would never do that to him.
Yeah, one thing I'll say is the biggest surprise of the movie is that I didn't think they were just gonna have this be a hilarious transition from Thunderbolts to New Avengers. The way they leaned into that joke, like just the entire bit of Val's manipulations turn into getting flipped on her and having to haphazardly release a new Avengers team that the internet then just dumps on. And everyone's like, are they ready? All the artwork.
You're talking about in-universe internet.
Yeah, the in-universe stuff. I thought that was effing hilarious. And it was a hilarious bit. It was a great joke they did. It made sense in that you need to have a public-facing Avengers team, and this is how it happens with Val. I enjoyed all of that.
And that was earned, I feel like, she was always pivoting to like a brand new plan. Right? Like whenever things go wrong, she'd be like, this is the new plan. And this is the new plan. And so the fact that like she was supposed to be unveiling Sentry as like the new hero. And then these guys walk through the door and she's like presenting the new Avengers made her untouchable. Right? Like now they couldn't attack her because she had just introduced them as heroes.
Yeah, but then they also say, hey, yo, we own you because the black part. But I like that too because
she's saved. She doesn't go to jail.
But I even like that of keeping Val's character a little more gray, right? Of like, to be clear, she's an antagonist, but she's not the kind of like if they have to save the world, she's going to be working with the heroes to help. Like I like those kind of like she's not evil, she's just the CIA, which I mean, I guess it's evil, but
the way she goes about it is questionable.
She is ultimately trying to do quote unquote the right thing. Yeah. She's trying to quote unquote do the right thing. She just doesn't have any real moral quandaries about it. But it's
a very distorted lens of what the right thing is.
Yeah, but I like that her character is still on the chessboard ultimately. She's a fun character. She's interesting. Seeing how the Thunderbolts and the blackmail stuff and all that even goes will be engaging. My only real complaint is they better not take the win out of my boy Sam's sails when it comes to him putting together his new Avengers team. I think we need to have one joke about the litigation about the new team, but I need Sam to I don't need them to undercut my guy Sam in terms of him leading the new Avengers for whatever this new shit in the next movie is. So I don't know if he needs to have they have a funny scene where they argue for a sec, but I need the new Avengers to get incorporated into Sam and fall in line because I like Sam as Captain America, and I don't want them to kind of undercut his character of him having a power struggle with the new Avengers. Like, hey, that's funny.
Definitely going to do that.
That's funny for they should do that for one bit joke, and then it's like, hey, yo, Sam got the shield, he in charge. Like, yo, fall the effing line.
Interesting. I don't know that that's going to happen, but
we'll see. But
I think they are going to have. Well, I don't know. I guess you could just keep them separate because they're not. These aren't cosmic level heroes, right? The new Avengers. So they are actually more suited for geopolitical struggles more than they are going to be for a coming Galactus or a coming, Doom or something like that. Not that they can't play a part, but
they will.
They are, It's like Hawkeye and Black Widow. They're only doing so much in Endgame. In Endgame, they're carrying the gauntlet. They're not wearing the gauntlet. Let's put it that way. So I do think I think the reason why it's coming is because they mentioned it, right? They were like, how is this gonna work with like Sam Wilson's Avengers that he's got to assemble, to fight off whatever's coming, Doom probably.
Maybe they do West Coast. Maybe they do the West Coast Avengers. That's a thing.
I don't know what that story is. I've heard of them, but yeah, I don't know what that
it's just another. It's just literally the Avengers are based out of New York, so they're just like, yo, America's really effing big. We need an Avengers team for West Coast threats.
I don't know if this is going to be a case of like New Avengers is actually a separate thing. Like Teen Titans is not the same as Titans, right? Or not the same as Justice League.
New Avengers are like their own separate team.
Right. So it doesn't have to be a conflict, but it could be if it's new as in a lowercase new, like this is the New Avengers versus if this is New Avengers. No, I don't know if that made sense.
No, I know what you're saying. The New Avengers, like that, is its own unique superhero team.
Yeah, so are they going to keep it that way in the movies, or are they going to say, no, we're the Avengers, not you, and then the other Avengers are going to be like, no, we're the Avengers, not you, and then it's like, oh, okay, great.
We'll see.
I feel like they're going to go that way.
They shouldn't drag it on too long.
I think it's going to be, I think it's
having them beef wouldn't make any sense.
Versus.
No, that don't make sense because they're all on the same side. No.
Yeah, but they're gonna want to do it their way. They're not gonna want to have to answer to somebody else. Okay. I don't know how to do this. How do you rate this movie? It sounds like you're into it. Does it slot in somewhere in terms of its well doneness, your enjoyment, whatever, however you want to do it? I don't know that I can actually place it on the ranking board yet. I mean, it's too fresh. I kind of want some time to digest it some more. I enjoyed the movie. I didn't think it was like amazing because I didn't think they landed the team aspect of it same way that other movies have done, like Guardians. But
I don't know how you could say that shit and then you even like Guardians. I was still down the hill that I'm not. I was never bought on Guardians becoming.
You didn't buy it, so same thing. Maybe like you didn't buy Guardians and I did. I was like, yeah, I felt like they went through it. They found out what happens when they don't work together. They like get messed up. But
the difference between me and you is that I'll be having evidence.
What? You had no evidence.
I gave you multiple evidence.
You gave evidence that didn't actually connect to what your thesis was.
MF, you just ignored it.
No.
What the hell?
The logic didn't connect.
What the hell?
The logic
what the hell? What is this?
All right. So what are you rating this movie?
I give it like an 8.5 out of 10. I enjoyed it.
Okay, so very good.
Time. I didn't have any real complaints.
Can you at this point slot it in between any other movies and be like, I hold it above this movie, below this movie, or this kind of neighborhood of movies?
This will probably be in my B plus tier. For me, What pushes a lot of movies over the top is me just kind of already having been a real big fan of the series. Like,
sure,
because it's just a level of fanboy that I won't even pretend doesn't just give every any movie. You get an extra point just off me being a fan. Just like, oh, I've been wanting this for my whole life, so okay, starting off with a point.
Okay, but, so what other movies are in this B plus tier, D tier from the MCU for you?
Doctor.
Like, are you putting Multiverse of Madness in this tier?
I might put Multiverse of Madness like. They're in the same tier, but Multiverse is at the higher end of that tier. Okay, that movie's so effing fun. But like, this is my B plus tier. So like, it's not my upper echelon of all my favorite Marvel movies, but it's still a good one. I enjoy. I'd watch it again. So I'd put this in the category with like I'd watch this over Iron Man 2 and 3.
Well, okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to see like what.
That's not helpful.
Yeah, all right. I'd put it in like the Doctor Strange, somewhere between Doctor Strange 1 and Doctor Strange 2 tier. I'd put it maybe around the same reason I liked like the first Ant-Man.
First Ant-Man was very entertaining.
Yeah, it was Shang-Chi? Yes, I would put it in that Shang-Chi territory of like a movie I genuinely enjoyed and had a fun time watching, and there's parts that are always going to stand out to me. The only reason it's not A+ is because it's not a character I grew up with. So sometimes there's that extra level of, oh my gosh, I've been wanting this my whole life. But like, I would put it in like the Shang-Chi, Doctor Strange 2 tier of like, it's not Infinity War. It's not Captain America 2, which that's not a realistic standard to aim for. But
maybe it's kind of a similar.
Because I think it's harder because some of the characters have a lot of their own icon weight pushing it behind them to where it'll be hard. It'll never quite compare. Captain America, Thunderbolts, as dope as the movie is, none of those characters' names are just front page headline enough for this to just be someone's A+ movie, which that's no fault of the movie's own thing, but it's just what it is. Same way Spider-Man movies are always just going to get a really high grading curve just because it's Spider-Man. People effing love Spider-Man. So as long as you get some good Peter Parker shit, it's going to be a highly rated movie. But I give it
Also, you can do some really cool stuff with fight scenes. He's got some clear struggles in terms of balancing his hero persona versus his personal life.
Yeah, plus the fan base is baked in, so you'd have less to worry about on the final. You can kind of afford to have a little more fun and get adventurous because a Spider-Man movie is going to get asses and seats no matter what you do. Thunderbolts, I think, have to be a little more strategic of what kind of movie they make because, frankly, there's a bigger margin of room for error just because people just might not want to see that shit, right? But 8.5, good movie. Maybe 8, maybe 8.6. Good movie. The best part though is definitely
the 0.1 makes a difference.
But I didn't think I expect to watch a Marvel movie where the villain is depression, and it was well done. And there's moments where I'm like, is this really kind of a little on the nose? No, because this is really how the shit be.
It didn't feel ham-fisted. It felt like it was dangerous.
When he was beating up his dark self, and I was like, oh, he's literally beating himself up over this. Hey, wait a sec, that ain't it. And then I'm in the theater, and then I'm coming to that realization. Right, Tony's next to me. She's coming to the same, and everyone's watching. Wait, hey, hold up, don't beat his ass. Actually, at first you're beat depression's ass, and you're like, wait, depression's you. You can't beat yourself up. But
you need love.
But that was that was the perfect character to do that message, and it was a well done message, and I want to give Marvel a shout out to that.
All right.
It can be hard to do these superhero movies and make them feel distinct in terms of what the theme is, and this was a very unique theme for them to pursue that other Marvel movies haven't done, and I really give them props for making it stand out in that regard.
All right. I don't know how to rate this, so I would just say 4 out of 5 for no actual reason other than that's how I feel about it.
Nah, man, give me an out of 10. I need an out of 10. That 4 ain't telling me nothing, bro.
8 out of 10. It was good. I liked it. I wouldn't say that everybody has to see it, even if they're Marvel fans. I wouldn't say that everybody has to see it. In the same way that I would say, if you're a Marvel fan, I know you need to have seen Ragnarok. I know you need to. I guess even if you're not a Marvel fan, you need to have seen Ragnarok because it's just an outstanding movie all the way around. You would have needed to have seen the first Iron Man just because it set the tone for what it was going to be. You're going to need to see Infinity War and Endgame, but before that you had to see Civil War and Winter Soldier, right? All of these iconic points within the timeline of those are those top tier movies where if you're not a big Marvel fan, but I would say these are still great movies and anybody could enjoy them. And then this is probably in the tier below that in terms of I think most people would enjoy a movie like this, but I don't think it's a movie everybody has to go see and rush out to see right now. So that's kind of where I fit. It sounds like we're a little bit on the same page there, just disagreeing on how we got there. And maybe the particular parts that we liked or didn't like about the movie. So, everybody in the comments tell Sav why he's wrong.
They not, because I know people at home right now listening man, what the fuck this man West talking about?
They didn't land the plane. They just didn't.
Look. You can vouch for yourself when we back in the PlayStation chat and everyone's seeing the movie, and then you can get you a pillow and a helmet for when everyone dog piles on you for being wrong. Wrong.
Fair enough. All right, that'll do it for us. Hit us up on Instagram at confidently_pod. We're also on YouTube. You can just search for Confidently Wrong Podcast. Sav, there is another Confidently Wrong podcast out there with, I don't know, they got 30 episodes out or something like that. They're now our mortal enemies. I don't know what they talk about. I just know that they exist now. They didn't trademark check the YouTubes or the podcast feeds. So we've got We've got some competition.
When I Google confidently wrong podcast, ours is the first thing that comes
Hey, we got to make sure we maintain that SEO rankings there.
So
so they got to change their name.
I see pictures of me back when I had cornrows.
Well, they got to change their name. Next episode, important, The Last of Us season 2. We're going to talk about the first 3 episodes. So your homework before the next one is to make sure you've seen at least the first 3 episodes of The Last of Us. I think overall it's been an incredible start to the season. I would say in one sense a lot has happened, in another sense not a lot has happened yet. And we're only going to have 7 episodes this season for The Last of Us. So this is about the halfway point. We're recording on a Sunday, which means we'll get another episode tonight. But we'll obviously not be able to talk about it. So, friends, do your homework, end up watching The Last of Us, and also let us know what you thought about Thunderbolts Asterisk, aka the new Avengers, on the Instagrams, and whether I was right that they didn't actually get the team up chemistry earned, or whether, like Savon said, they didn't need it. They just needed to justify them being heroic and wanting to save people, which I don't think the movie was about that. All right, friends. See you later. Bye-bye. Later.
Oh, this man wasn't going to be a nosebleed, yo.
Luka Doncic! Get yourself in shape over the summer. We're coming back next year.
That chubby motherfucker ain't never going to be in shape.
You have little faith. He's going to get on the LeBron nutrition and exercise plan, bro.
You better be content that he's good at basketball. That's all he got. That's all he got for y'all.
He's good at offensive basketball.
Hey, that's... I don't even want to say it's half the game. I'm like,
it's half the game.
It's not low key though.
All right. See you later. Bye.